Some of you, if not most, probably won't care about this news, but I'm abandoning my series of videos called Peeking at Netflix Cartoons 2018. I honestly don't think I have enough patience to sit through stuff like Lava Land, Mototown Magic, Minecraft Story Mode. Not to mention, I doubt I would have anything interesting to say about them. I mean, how many times I can say, oh, this is boring and shitty before everyone gets tired. So instead, I'm gonna end this series by sharing my first impressions on Hilda and SheRa, the only two shows remaining that are at least slightly interesting. Hilda received a lot of hype a couple of months ago around the time of its release. I remember watching the first two episodes and thinking they looked pretty pleasant. Now Hilda borrows several design choices that resemble current trends, like I'm pretty sure I saw a character that pretty much came out of Craig of the Creek. But I will say that Hilda stands out above all of its predecessors simply because Hilda looks the most polished. I can't think of any modern cartoon that have the quote-unquote Cal art style, or honestly any modern cartoon out there that looks more polished and has a more aesthetically pleasing art. Everything from its line work, color palettes, facial proportions, shadow shading, pretty much everything looks so nice. I also think that it has its own aesthetic identity. The outlines look intentionally imperfect to give this authentic vibe to the drawings. The backgrounds look like they came out of a children's book, in a good way of course. In long distance shots, the characters have simplified eye shapes, which looks cute. The color design is usually pretty good, and there's also this thing where the sky has different layers, with each one being either a variation of a setup color or another one completely meant to invoke a certain atmosphere. For instance, if it's evening, the higher sky layer right at the top will be darkened blue, emphasizing how the sun is going down and night is coming. The keyframing is high class. There are zero flat shots and every movement a character makes looks so fluid. Honestly, I could spend an entire week just looking at Hilda, but unfortunately, even though there's this sort of meme that cartoon reviewers don't have a life, I actually do, and that makes me kind of impatient when it comes to my viewing routine. Hilda had a pretty good start with the first two episodes, but then when I reached episode 7, I started to get a bit salty. What I initially thought it was going to be a character-driven ongoing story eventually became kind of episodic. I mean, I could be wrong, I haven't actually finished the series, but up until I stopped watching it, I got the impression that that was the direction they were going to take, and as a result, the first two episodes that I initially thought were the Kickstarter for an overarching character-driven narrative now seem like they were just simply a two-part pilot. Now, Hilda being episodic isn't inherently a problem. I mean, my favorite cartoon of all time is like 98% episodic and has little to no continuity, but that just brings me to my second problem with the series. Hilda and her mom are pretty cool. Her colleagues, however, they're kind of boring and they're supposed to be supporting characters. When a series is episodic, its biggest strength has to at least be the cast, given how they're the ones who make whatever story they're in entertaining to watch. I trust that Hilda and her mom would probably do that, but everyone else I just don't. Even the creatures, yeah, sometimes they're cool, and that giant long-living creature from one of the earlier episodes was great. I love everything about what he delivered, but it was also kind of a rarity. Now, the series isn't by any stretch boring. I mostly enjoyed every episode. I just think that by the time I reached episode 7, it wasn't as captivating as I thought they were going to be when I watched the first two episodes. While the later ones still reference Hilda's attempt at adapting to the urban world, which seemed to be a driving force that the series has, I needed more in order for the series to hold my attention. I will say one thing, I do intend to finish watching Hilda, and if you can convince me that the series got more interesting, I will finish it sooner than I probably would have. SheRa was kind of weird to watch in its early stages because it felt like they were betting on the same selling point Dragon Quest had, which was the non-black and white social-political tension between two important social groups, except SheRa felt more black and white and it was quickly made clear who was the opposing side, unless later on they'd subvert my expectations. This was another series that received a lot of celebration, although it did initially garner a ton of backlash due to the visual distinction when compared to the source material. Some people even say that SheRa herself looked like a dude. Personally, I think she looks feminine enough, especially when you remove her armor when she just has an obviously female body. On the subject of Dragon Quest, I know I said in my last video that I was going to continue watching it, but I didn't. I mean, I tried, but the initial selling point kinda wore off. SheRa is a series that has a bigger chance of holding my attention for longer than Dragon Quest, although I have to pretend to be an animation critic for just 1 minute because I have a couple of gripes with the presentation. The character designs, while I don't think they're that bad, and the facial animation is actually more expressive than I thought it would be, the designs themselves look kind of weak. When I saw the initial promotional art, I was already worried because of how generic SheRa looked. I felt the same impression I had when I watched Milo Murphy's Law, in which the main characters look like generic background characters from Phineas and Ferb. Even when you don't compare this version with the original one, which trust me, even if I did, I think most 80s cartoons look shitty, so I'd probably side with this reboot. But even then, these characters still look like cheap assets. And it's not just that, the backgrounds, while they do take place in unique locations with enough detail put in them, they don't feel like they have much of a personality. If I saw a random background frame from the Powerpuff Girls, even if it was an unfamiliar location, I would probably still be able to tell it's from the Powerpuff Girls. If I were to do the same experiment with SheRa, I honestly don't think I would be able to successfully identify it. The colors and effects are also not that flashy. Storyboard wise, there isn't much wrong with SheRa. I think it's the transition to animation that puts the series down for me. It isn't as janky as Dragon Quest, but it's also no Hilda or Star vs. the Forces of Evil. Is this enough for me to stop watching the series? I don't know. Maybe. The plot doesn't seem super compelling, none of the ideas introduced seem all that intriguing. The story does seem decent enough and the character dynamics are serviceable, so I would recommend it. I just can't promise that I'll continue watching it. Anyway, I'm done with Netflix for now anyway. I'm honestly just waiting for the supposed Cowboy Bebop live action series. I'm really curious and I'm probably gonna have a good time, although I can't guarantee it's gonna be for unironic reasons. Anyway, subscribe I guess, and bye for now.